We're going to start by making this cool pocket that sits at the outside of the bag, hidden under there. So it's like a little hidden pocket that you can just reach around and grab things from. I put my phone in there. So it's a slightly unusual construction because we want to tuck that zip away underneath this flap here. Okay, we'll start with this main bag panel piece, which is D, the main pocket piece. And I'm going to put that in front of me with the right side facing me. And then I want to take my zip and I'm going to put that right side's facing down and match that up to the right hand side as I'm looking at it. It doesn't really matter right or left. I suppose if you're right handed like me, then you might put it on this side. I don't think it makes too much difference. So then we're going to get our lining fabric and sandwich that. So we've got my lining there, my zip and my main fabric. And it's all right sides together. So right side, zip facing down, right sides together and lining on top. Match up the raw edges, centralise everything and then pop a couple of clips to hold everything together, or you can use pins, however you would normally work if you're putting in a zip. And then I'll just come in and wiggle that zip puller down out of the way. Okay, so you should just be able to see that when you open this up, it looks like this. Okay, so you're going to put your zipper foot on your machine. So this one will have the grooves on the bottom to allow you to travel over your zip. Pull my thread to the back. There we go. Okay, and then I want to tuck that under there. So there's my zip hidden under there. And I just want to get nice and close to the edge of that zip. So I'm going to line up the tongue of my zip presser foot with the edge of my fabric as a bit of a reference point. Back stitch to begin with. And then making sure as I go that all those raw edges remain lined up as one. Now I'm approaching my puller, so I'll just make sure my needle is down, lift my foot, bring my hand in here, and I can wiggle my zip tape out the way. Back down again. So there's my line I've just sewn. Just push that away, give it a press. Just want to make sure that that lining stays out of the way. Okay, so when you fold that back, your zip is there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to just sew a line of stitching through the lining side through the seam allowance. So the main fabric is pushed this side, lining fabric is here, and all my seam allowances are pushed this way towards the lining, and I'm going to sew through all those layers. If I feel that that zip puller is going to get in the way, I can just move it down a bit. There we go. Nice and close to the edge there. Okay, so next I just want to fold that over in half. So I'm looking at the right side of both fabrics with my zip in the middle there. I take my lining piece and fold that over, bringing it to my other side of my fabric. And I'm just going to sew down here with a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Put my normal presser foot back on I'm sewing with a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Making sure those raw edges are lined up. Okay, so I've just sewn this seam down here. So now what I'm going to do is turn this, sort of you end up with a tube almost of fabric. I want to turn that right sides out. So you now have a tube of fabric with a zip inside it, or attached to the side of it. Then what we want to do is, looking at the lining side, just match up your centre notches and clip them. Smooth it so that it wants to sit flat and then give it a press. And press on both sides. So hopefully you can begin to see how this pocket works, because what will happen now is we'll put this onto the back of your bag and there's your zip hidden in there. I'm looking at the right side of my pocket there. There's my underside with my zip. What I want to do now is draw a line 3 centimetres in from the edge. 1, 2, 3. Now it helps having a stripe. Or maybe it doesn't, depends on whether your stripes line up. I'm going to use a disappearing ink. So I can see that my red line, my 3 centimetres in, is just on the edge of that stripe there. And then I'll do the same on the other side. Might be a bit trickier because the zip's in the way. Fold that back just for a sec. So I can see that my 3 centimetre line actually is just to the inside of that blue stripe there. So in fact it makes sense because I've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we've got that coming in there. The next what we're going to do is we're going to sew through all layers along here. So we're going to sew through your lining and your zip tape and your fabric all in one go. So the stitch line should end up almost sort of on top of this stitch line that you did here to keep the lining out of the way, or it should be just next to it. And what you don't want to do is sew through your zip teeth. So just make sure that your line, your 3 centimetre line, is coming in to the left hand side of your zip teeth. What you want to do is you want to make sure that this line here is basically coming through to the left hand side of your zip. Now if it isn't and it's kind of wanting to sit on top of these teeth, just go 4 centimetres or 3.5 centimetres instead, and then do the same. You just want these two to sort of look equal, just as a feature really, just to make the bag look nice from the back. So yeah, we're going to now sew through all layers to the left hand side of the hidden zip. Undo the zip so that it's out of the way, and then pop that down there. Whoops, come over a little bit. I just want to be, I can use my stripe as a guide actually, but if you haven't got a stripe then use your chalk line as a guide. So I can see that I'm coming to the side of my zip teeth. I'll just move that puller out of the way. So you can see that line of stitching there, and on the inside it's ended up just here. Hard to see actually in this light. So now to just place it onto the panel on our bags. This is my main back panel, my bag, and I want to just line up my stitched through zip panel with my bag, and I want to line up the center back notches. So if I fold that in half, there's my center back there, and that should line up perfectly. Oops, I'll just transfer that to the right side. That should just line up there, because I just want it all to be nice and central. And then once you're happy that that's all good, then we can just grab some pins. And I'm just going to pin it in place through this side here. So I'm just going through all layers. And I'm not going to stitch this just yet. I'm just going to leave these pins in place to hold it together. And we're going to come and stitch that later. So just pop a couple of pins in. If you were making this entire bag with a leatherette, I wouldn't suggest leaving pins in. So I would just use a tape or something. But with the fabric, it's absolutely fine. Whoops. Right, there we are. That's looking lovely. Now got this pocket coming together, you can imagine how it's going to look. I could just simply stitch this side of the zip tape down here and be done with it, and then my pocket's done, but I actually want to add an additional finishing touch. So I'm going to bind the edge of that zip tape, and I just think it looks really, really pretty. So I'm going to chop a bit of my binding that matches up to the same length of the zip tape, so about 20 centimetres. And then we're going to press that binding in half. You can finger press or use your iron. This is quite starchy, this binding actually, so it finger presses quite well. And then we're just going to fold that over. Oh, it's raining outside. It's cosy when you're in a cabin in the garden, but the rain is coming down outside. It's actually quite cosy. Okay, and then we can just clip. So I've got that loose side of that zip tape there. I'm just enveloping it with the binding, and it's just going to make it look really, really pretty. You get that little pop of colour on your zip when you look underneath the secret panel. I can undo the zip if it makes it easier. So my binding, the edge of my binding can just butt up to the zip teeth there. Just clip it in place. A few clips, oops, upside down. Okay, so you can see what's happening there. I've just folded my binding around the free side of my zip tape, and now I want to go over to my machine and I'm going to stitch that in place. So I'll just be working on this bit here. So just line everything up. I want to go a bit over to the side more. That looks lovely. Okay, back stitch. And then all the way down. I don't know if you can hear the rain. It's lovely. Hope it doesn't rain for the weekend. Although if it does, it just means we'll have to stay in and do more sewing. Right, move that zip puller out of the way. And there she is. Looks really neat. So there he is, our little zip pocket hidden away under there. One final step now is to stitch along the other side of our binding to finally secure our zip in place. And the reason why, again, I'm doing it like this as well is because this is going to sit against your back. I wanted the zip to sit flat. I didn't want it to be tucked under and folded like that, because then it would be bulky. And I actually love this flash of colour that you get from the binding as well. So that's just pinned in place in a couple of places. I'm now just going to stitch all the way down here. Little back stitch at the beginning there, and then off we go. And that's now stitched down. Okay, so that's all ready to go. We're going to move on to making the pocket bag flap next, which will eventually fit onto our panel.